a podcast made by Stone Productions.
Hi, my name's Paul. I've been teaching English as a foreign language for 29 years, and I'd like to share my thoughts in a series of shows on how the language is changing. In particular, how certain words are becoming unfashionable or even forbidden to be in use, and other words are coming into the lexicon. For example, political correctness and wokeism is having a huge influence on our language, and this is the show I'd like to kick off with today, and we will share our thoughts with Gobby on this, who's also an English teacher, and we will try to analyse why the language is changing and analyse perhaps the logic behind it. I hope you enjoy the show. Hi Gobby, thank you for coming in.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. I think we should kick off maybe looking at pronouns.
Those are interesting ones.
Yeah, so if we divide it these days, we've got personal pronouns. I think this is what we learnt as kids.
Mm-hmm.
We've got neo-pronouns.
Neo-pronouns, now those are interesting.
Like, I think the classic one is sie and sie.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sie is working with sie.
Okay.
How does that sound to you?
Well, it sounds rather strange.
A bit
Germanic?
Germanic?
A bit Germanic and a bit artificial, to be honest.
Yeah.
So something like the Esperanto language. You may remember that there was this invented language, the Esperanto. And, this sie, zia, these pronouns, it's sort of like, to me, they sound a bit artificial.
I think you're right. And maybe that's why they've been bypassed. And we're looking at these non-binary pronouns.
Yep.
So, for example, sie and sie becomes they and them.
Yes.
How do you feel about that? Because grammatically, it's kind of incorrect, isn't it?
Grammatically, it is. But, it's... for me, I find myself in quite a strange position as a teacher when I'm trying. When I'm teaching these pronouns, how these politically correct versions come into play, and whether we need to talk about them in the language classroom. Is an interesting question. And I think because English changes as a language.
Yes, rapidly, yes,
year by year. And of course, we English teachers, we go with the flow. We have to go with the flow. We have to go with how the language is changing. Then, these gender-neutral pronouns will definitely appear in the language classroom. Although, personally speaking, for me, they just don't come to my mouth, right? So it's a bit strange to use them, and I wonder how native speakers feel about it. So how do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a bit of a loaded question. Yeah. So I think I agree with you. I think the neo pronouns, they do sound a little bit ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the non-binary community also feels that somehow it makes a mockery of pronouns, and that's why they went for the they them, which exist anyway. And actually, I will say that although they're grammatically incorrect, for example, if somebody is always having accidents, we do say sometimes they should be more careful.
Yeah, and
which is a singular person using.
Yes, and you have the one. One should be more careful.
Yes.
So that's another option as well.
Yeah. So there's a bit of flexibility here, isn't there? So
there is, certainly.
I know what you mean. It's grammatically incorrect, and we learned these pronouns, and now we're pushing them aside. But it's an interesting area, isn't it? Because there is some flexibility there.
Yes, I totally agree with you.
Yeah. But I think we can both agree the Z and the Zia, it's kind of strange.
Yes, it is. It is, and although they, this and all the other forms,
all the other stuff, yeah.
They try to make up a conjugation for them,
Yes.
and I don't think that even native speakers would find them natural or would be able to say them naturally. So I believe that they were created for the single purpose of, this gender neutral and politically correct kind of thing.
Yes.
But they will be just pushed aside and not used.
Yeah, it looks like we've gone from personal pronouns to non-binary pronouns, and it's up to you what you choose. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Good point. Let's go on to job titles.
Okay, those are interesting. Yeah, you collected a lot, and Paul, I must tell you, I looked at the words.
Uh-huh.
And I find myself in a very awkward situation of saying that these are the words that I learned when I first started to learn English many, many years ago. And with all this political correctness and how language changes, I find myself in a situation where I sort of have to relearn the language on the one hand. On the other hand, when I have conversations with my friends who are English, I have to pay extra attention, pay extra care for using the right vocabulary. And, sometimes I even apologize to people that, please excuse me if I don't use the correct words, because these are the words that I learned.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And, forgive me for not being politically correct, as I should be all the time.
And what is their reaction to that?
They say, okay. They are very generous. So sometimes I get corrected with my very close friends. They do correct me, or they look at me non-approvingly. So I know that I've said something wrong. But they are quite okay with that. They're quite okay with that.
Yeah. I think the first one we're looking at, so obviously policeman and chairman.
Now, this is an interesting one.
Right.
Because, it's obviously his police officer or chairperson.
Yes.
And my colleagues who work in public schools told me that the vocabulary policeman, policewoman were actually omitted from all the teaching material. So they don't really meet this older terminology.
Really?
So the textbooks and the course books, they actually bring the words police officer.
Right.
So which is an interesting aspect.
Yeah.
So this language change already is starting to appear in textbooks and course books as well. So that's an interesting one. But chairperson, I think it's perfectly okay.
Yeah. So I think that in that respect, policeman or chairman, because it's not gender neutral, and of course the chairperson could be a woman, the police officer could be a woman, so I think that's okay. Yeah,
that's fine.
That's
fine. That's fine.
Dustbin man. So dustbin man, of course, dustbins are the things you put out to be collected. That seems to be sanitation engineer these days.
Yes, I've heard that on media.
Yeah.
And it made me think, and actually I missed the rest of the news flash, because I said, what is a sanitation engineer?
The sanitation aspect's okay, they are cleaning up, let's face it. But the engineer is the question, because engineer is from my point of view, that's a high achievement, isn't it? To be an engineer, you have to do some learning, you have to be skilled in certain aspects. Does that apply to the people who collect the rubbish, or am I being disrespectful to them? Or sanitation engineer is too strong? What's your feeling on that? It's an interesting one, isn't it? Of course, we want more glamorous job titles, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
And this, for example, this sanitation engineer, I think, reflects the notion of bringing in equality in every field, which I think, to my view, language always reflects some kind of ideology on the one hand.
Yes.
And with on the other hand, it denotes the the things and the phenomena that are around us so that we can understand each other. For example, if you have the water, like the word water, if we didn't have a common understanding and a common agreement to what these set of phonemes mean, like WATER, then we wouldn't be able to identify the objects or the things around us.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is that the set of vocabulary we use works like a social agreement, something that everybody understands. And with these politically correct phrases coming into the language, they try to sort of reflect a social equality, which is fine. But equality should go towards everybody, I feel. So going back to what you were saying...
You mean like the engineer
yes.
is kind of diminished because everybody's an engineer?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So I feel personally that those people who put in time, effort and energy for so many years at universities to get this profession, to get this degree, to be able to work in this profession, they should get their acknowledgement, if that's a good word.
Yeah, it's a good point again,
yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
Prostitute.
Oh.
Now, of course, prostitute has a negative nuance anyway.
Well, it does.
Yeah.
It
but
does.
Now we're talking about sex workers came in, I think, and now sex care providers.
Mm.
Basically, it's true, isn't it? That's
It
what
is.
they're doing.
That's what they do.
Why should we use a negative word? Because, I don't know. That's a difficult one, of course. But I think prostitutes has a kind of ugly sort of feel to it, doesn't it?
Yes,
like
yes.
selling yourself.
And it has been
they are providing a service.
Yeah, and it has been a derogatory term for in other situations. So not just actually referring to those ladies, but in a just a common situation when a woman wanted to be told off. Sometimes a woman could be called a prostitute.
Yes.
And without her being actually one.
Yes.
So I think this term is very, and has been very derogatory. So I'm perfectly okay, but I've heard one, which I really like. It's Ladies of the Night.
Yeah.
I think that's a really nice one. I think it's elegant and sexy at the same time, if I can say that.
Yeah. Let's move on to housewife, because we were talking about engineers.
Mm.
So, they're being called now domestic engineers.
Oh, I would love to be called domestic engineer. No, I wouldn't.
Right, you don't feel like it's kind of...
No, I'm not a robot, thank you very much. I mean, this is my very personal reaction.
Yeah.
Of course, I am not a housewife because I am a working woman. But there was a period of my life when I was a housewife, raising young kids. And were I referred to as engineer?
Domestic engineer. Yeah, domestic because you're in the house, I guess.
Yes.
Engineer because you're doing things.
Yes, I understand the notion.
Lots of things.
But my reaction would have been, says, no, thank you very much. I'm not a robot. I'm a human.
Right.
But that's a very personal reaction on my end.
So you don't like the engineer aspect because you think it's too robotic.
Too robotic,
too
yes.
Automated.
Correct. So I think this politically correct term is just a little bit too much.
Right. So you prefer the housewife option, or there was also the homemaker. I remember
Homemaker, yes, homemaker. Now homemaker is okay because it can both refer to a man and a woman.
Yes.
And English being the lingua franca, I think there are other cultures in the world where English is spoken. For example, in Japan, like there are many women who, when they get married, they go stay home and become a housewife. They even leave their jobs. and maybe that English is such an international language. Do you think it's fair to call those Japanese ladies domestic engineers? Because traditionally they are housewives, and I think it's a very noble thing, to run a home, to make a home,
Yes.
to provide for everyone,
Yes.
to take care of things being clean, food cooked, clothes being mended.
Yes, it's not something to be looked down upon, is it? So
Yes,
why are we looking
yes.
down upon it anyway?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I think being a housewife is a noble thing, and for me there is no problem for it to have the word housewife.
Right.
I mean, I could even go with house husband.
Yes, which was the original plan, yeah, housewife or house husband.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let's go on to economics and society, I
Mhm.
think. Poor, of course, poor has become out of fashion.
Yes.
Low income is used. Again, I think that also has a kind of negative nuance, no? Low income, because it means your income is not so big.
But
Let's face
how
it.
else would you call it?
There's another option, this kind of underprivileged.
Okay, but that if low is a negative word, then underprivileged is sort of like a
Yeah,
negative
but
word.
privilege is something which is given, and you are just unlucky because you are not receiving the same privileges as other people.
Mm.
So you can understand some logic there, no? Underprivileged, low. But you're
I
right.
see some
Fundamentally, you're
logic.
right. Low income. Yeah, we have to talk in explicit terms. Yeah, the income is not so high.
Yes.
Yeah, and poor, but poor, low income. What is the difference really?
I think low income is, the word poor, to my understanding, or in the area where I grew up, poor came with some kind of a stigma, that you came from a poor environment.
Yeah, and low income doesn't.
And maybe low income doesn't have this. So, as I understand, the aim of this political correctness is to remove these kind of social stigmas.
That's true. Yeah.
And I think this poor and low income can be a good example for this. Because,
Right.
if you have low income, okay, maybe it's for a period of time. Maybe you are poor for a period
Yeah,
of
maybe
time.
that's the key. No, poor kind of suggests a sort of non-ending poor, but low income, as you say, maybe next year could be middle income, higher income.
Yeah, that could change. That
Yeah.
could change. So
Yeah.
I'm
Maybe
quite
that's
okay
the
with it.
logic. Yeah.
I'm quite okay with low income,
Right.
with the word low income. I mean,
But
even,
low has a kind of negative nuance too, doesn't it? So low is
well, if you take like negative adjectives like never, rarely, seldom, they have a negative meaning.
Yeah.
How will they be changed?
They will be. Yeah. We've got ghetto.
Okay.
Of course, ghetto has, I think, a lot of sort of nuances. Of course, that's absolutely not allowed these days.
Yeah,
And we've got substandard housing, underprivileged area, maybe. Yeah. What do you think about that? I think that's nicer, isn't it? Ghetto
Yes.
does have a particularly negative
yes,
sort of,
yes,
feeling about
yes,
it.
Yes. I have the feeling that ghetto will remain with us as a word, purely because
As a derogatory word.
not as a derogatory word, purely as a word of history, because from history,
Right, yes.
the
You mean the Second World War? and
Second
stuff,
World
yeah.
War ghettos,
Mhm.
and substandard housing areas in Latin America, for example.
Yeah.
Then from the historic point of view, I think ghetto will remain with us as a word.
Yes. From
And-
historical, but not in contemporary times.
Not in contemporary times.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Although so it means substandard housing.
Yes.
But it has, all these nuances of the language. Then, for example, in Hungarian, we use the word ghetto for, many houses being on a very confined space. Houses that are alike, that are the same,
Right.
like these socialist type block of flats.
Really? You use that for ghetto?
And we say, in informal Hungarian, we use the word ghetto. And it doesn't just, fun fact, we don't only use it for older housing estates, we use it for very modern ones as well. Like there are some areas of Budapest where...
So the meaning is you're too close to each other?
Too cramped
no space,
and no space, and the
Yeah.
houses are all the same. It's like a box on top of box. So in informal Hungarian, we call it ghetto. Going back to the English one, I think substandard housing is okay, and I'm sure that in news flashes and media reports, ghetto will be replaced by this,
Yes.
and it's quite okay. And
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Recipient. So recipient. It's a strange one, yeah. But it has been sort of flagged by certain areas. Recipient, as in terms of you receive something, normally a benefit.
mm-hmm,
So you're benefit dependent.
mm-hmm.
And somehow this dependency, especially with benefits, is kind of not acceptable for some people. So they're using like service user.
Mm-hmm.
So let's take somebody who's unemployed, receives a benefit because of that, a job seeker's allowance. He's not a recipient, he's a service user.
Now this is
too
strange.
complicated now?
This is
or-
strange because service is a very, very wide
Yeah, well, all service
term.
users. Yeah,
Yes, we are
generally
all
everything.
service.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
we
yeah.
are all service users. So I think if this really comes into use, then this is a word that must be taught. I mean, with its unique, special meaning.
Yeah.
So that students of English or learners of English would be able to understand when they read the word in a news flash, for example,
Yeah.
like Mr. Brown was a service user. What kind of service user was
it's
he?
too general, isn't it? In some ways. Yeah,
Yes, in some ways, yes,
Yeah.
I have the feeling, but honestly, I believe it is used in the English language. Otherwise, you wouldn't be telling it to me. But as a language learner, as a language teacher, I have the feeling that this word should be noted with a special meaning.
Yes, and you're more interested in what type of service we're talking about. Yeah,
Sure,
not just
sure.
benefits. Yeah,
Sure. I think this is how we think.
Yeah.
When you hear a word like service, you immediately jump to the conclusion: what kind of service?
Yeah, and if you hear the word recipient, do you feel some negative nuance there, or
Because I'm not a native speaker, I don't.
right?
So I don't feel any nuances with the recipient.
Yeah.
Is a person who receives something. So for
Yes.
me, it's a neutral term.
Yes.
For me, I feel it's a
Yes.
neutral term.
It doesn't have to be somehow dependency.
No,
No.
it doesn't transpire at all.
Yeah, this is interesting stuff.
Yeah.
Wanted criminal, for example, we hear it a lot in the TV series.
Yes.
We're looking for a person of interest. Yeah.
A person of interest.
So I
Of
guess
course,
the idea there is not to judge someone before we know if they are the criminal or not. Yeah.
Yes,
Which is
yes,
logical,
yes,
I guess.
yes.
Yeah, because we're looking for a criminal. We don't know if he's a criminal. We're looking for this person, but of course there has to be a court case and so on. So a person of interest, I think. That's fair.
Why didn't they stick with only wanted
Yeah, or suspect.
or suspect?
Yeah, maybe suspect is also loaded. Suspect. Why is he a suspect? The stigma, remains. Yeah,
Could be.
Mhm.
Could be. So the person of interest is okay, and if you watch TV, if you see it on TV, I reckon that probably you'll be seeing a police officer, right?
Yes.
Saying that the person of interest. So you would immediately decipher that, okay, they are looking for a guy
who
or
thinks
a girl.
they think who did it.
Yes.
Yeah. What about the West? So
I don't know that one. Can you
the
help
West,
me out on that?
Yeah, we're talking now global minority.
The West is the global minority.
Yes, and of course
I
the
love
developing world is the
global majority.
Exactly, yes. Because the West has some kind of arrogance about it. It's we are the West, we are superior. That's why we're thinking about we don't like this term. What's your opinion on that? We want to go to the West. The West. Is the East bad or the South bad? It's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a very interesting one.
For me, it's a kind of neutral thing. Yeah, we have the West. Yeah,
yeah.
It means
and
the
the
West,
East,
the West,
and the South, and
Europe
the North,
and America.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but maybe some people interpret as arrogance.
Well, you got me here. These words, these are geographical
Yes,
words,
but we have
right?
global minority. Of course, most people are not in the West. So yeah, global majority, global minority. It's it's a stretch.
Honestly, living in Hungary, do we belong to the West? I'm not
Good
sure.
question.
That's the thing. That's one question that came to my mind. My mind is full of
It's a bit
questions.
controversial.
It is. It's okay. Every community is comprised of people, and honestly, I wouldn't like to be labeled as the global minority. I am just a simple person living in Hungary, Eastern Europe, and I feel this more of a label. Like, I wouldn't like to be labeled like this. I would just like to go on with my life, live my life, where I live.
Yes.
And that's true that many issues of the modern world will not be decided in the Western countries. For example, environmental issues.
Mm-hmm.
They will be decided in Asia, Latin America, and not in Western societies. So from this point of view, yes, West is sort of like a minority. And if you just look at the number of people living on these continents, West is clearly in minority. But to turn it around and to create a label that is controversial for me. So I think this is something that goes too far, at least for me.
Okay.
I don't know. How do you feel about it, Paul?
I don't know. It's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like to be called global minority?
It's an interesting one because I think the West, I also feel it's a kind of arrogant term. But global minority also, to me, feels a bit strange. Why do we stress minority, majority? Why is it important?
Yes.
Yeah. These countries are in the West, yeah? So it's geographical.
Yes, it is.
Is it really an issue? Apparently it is, but we're confused about that one a little bit.
Yes, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, we're a bit confused about that.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on, Gobby. I'm a bit confused though because, policeman, postman, not acceptable. But we're still using words like mansplaining and manspreading. So can we have it both ways? So they're not gender neutral, yeah? Obviously
correct.
postman, but obviously mansplaining. But does it have to be a man who does it? Manspreading, does it have to be a man who's doing that spreading?
It's typically men who do that, right?
Isn't that sort of, again, a little bit...
It's typically, I mean, it's sort of like and man here is used. I think this is a behavior that is typically done by men. So this is how
But that's also
the
a
word
stereotype,
came.
isn't it? So,
It is.
yeah.
It is. So this is how the word came about.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. That they are politically correct or not, and I'm not sure. I don't know how many men would be offended by saying, for example, if I, as a woman, told them, or if I tell you, sorry, we've known each other for such a long time, so I hope you take it okay. So, Paul, stop mansplaining me. Would you get offended?
It's an interesting one, that. Yeah, I think probably you would, no? You'd feel, oh, have I, been patronising in some way? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But
Yeah.
would you be offended by my use of the word itself, or my, just telling how I feel what you did?
Yes, I think it's a good question. And I think it's worse if you use the word man with it. Yeah.
Okay.
I feel that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it stresses you're a man, you think you can do it, but you're just being silly anyway, yeah? So perhaps it's not so bad, yeah.
So do you think
Yeah.
that this word, or these two words, are en route for change?
I think so, yeah. I think if we're going to change, everything that's gender, why are we selecting words and not doing other words?
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point. Yeah.
It is. Yeah.
Mansplaining, yeah. But we should move on. We haven't got much time. But what about local?
Local.
Yes. He's a local guy, or he's a local woman, or she's a local woman, sorry. Is it a problem?
Well, again, I don't feel it a problem because originally I am a language learner and a language
Yes.
user. So
Yes.
for me, local means someone in the area, right?
Yeah.
So it's just
someone who's brought up in the area, knows the area.
lives
yeah.
there.
So why
and
are some
it is-
people having problem in local then? They think it's somehow, excluding
excluding
other
who?
people who are not locals. It's also maybe developing too much, this topic,
I think it's just pushing it too far.
Yeah. What about headquarters?
Headquarters.
Yeah, HQ.
Okay, what's the politically correct form for HQ?
You don't use the word headquarters, you use the geographical location.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, for example, our office is, this Geneva office. We have other offices in other areas. Headquarters somehow is colonial. Sort of suggesting one office is superior to another office.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's a bit strange because there normally is an office which is bigger than the other. So that should be the HQ, I guess, or the central office. So why are we saying again that, HQ, headquarters, just Geneva office, Budapest office, Hamburg office?
I have to say that I don't agree with this because most of the companies are hierarchical in structure, right?
Yes.
So they're not flat. They're hierarchical. So there is a management, there is a leadership, and to say where the leadership resides, right? There has to be a different word. I think the word that is used for the central offices of a company should reflect that this is where the management operates or the top management operates.
Yes. You don't feel this arrogance and somehow this office is superior to other offices.
No. Not at all.
We think that's maybe too much of a stretch again. Okay. Let's finish on pregnant.
Okay.
Pregnant for you is okay, or you feel some kind of issue with that?
I don't feel any issue with the word pregnant.
Do you feel a difference if I say expectant mother?
No, honestly, no, I don't feel any difference. Pregnant or expectant mother or a woman with a child.
Right.
For me, these are all equal terms.
Okay.
Maybe for me, pregnant sounds a little bit more official, like more formal. Expectant mother is like neutral, and the woman with a child is sort of kind. That's the kind.
The argument goes that pregnant focuses on, for example, the woman's shape, which could be an issue, I don't know, but the expectant mother focuses on the child coming into the world. So it's more positive somehow. I don't know. It's also an interesting one, isn't it?
It's an interesting notion, but do you honestly think that when people speak in the natural flow of conversation, all these notions run through one's mind?
Yeah.
So
I don't think so, do you? I
don't.
If she is pregnant, it's, no one will be offended by that, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I am absolutely 100% sure that there are much worse phrases for being pregnant, even in English, right? So that's derogatory or pejorative or, looking down on some women. So I at this point, honestly, I don't know what the point is with pregnant.
Yeah. So what's our conclusion from this analysis then? So we can understand some of the language changing, but we're a little bit confused about certain directions.
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so.
Yeah. Anything which changes, evolves. So there's always, subjective aspects to this, I guess.
Yes, but thankfully, nothing is carved in stone.
Yes.
So
And everybody can use what they want.
Yes, and maybe we should have this conversation 50 years later to see what changes remained in the English language.
So even 1 year later, yeah.
Even 1 year later.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Okay, so Paul, thank you very much for inviting me. It was a nice conversation.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too. And look forward to you on the next show. Thank you very much, Bobby.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
A podcast made by Stone Productions.